My name is Cameron, and my older sister Lily was the star that shadowed me as a child. Aunts, uncles, cousins, you name it, were always in our home. Attracted by the prospect of my mom's renowned barbecue and the opportunity to witness Lily's performance, they would swarm into our backyard like ants to a picnic. With its well-kept lawn and large oak trees serving as the ideal background, our backyard resembled a theater. While Mom hurried around making sure everyone had a drink, Dad would light the grill and fill the air with the aroma of sizzling meat and charcoal. "Lily, sweetie." Aunt Marge's voice would break through the noise as she called out, "Why don't you give us a little song?" All eyes would suddenly go to my sister. With a playful gleam in her eye and her golden locks bouncing, Lily would climb onto a chair. She would make a big clearing of her throat, and then magic. She would perform her best Celine Dion imitation, while My Heart Will Go On reverberated around the yard. The grown-ups would erupt, yelling and clapping like they were at an actual performance. Dad would frequently wipe a tear from his eye, while Mom and Dad would grin with delight. I would be out to the side, attempting to blend in with the shrubs in the meantime. My voice sounded like a strangled cat every time I opened my lips to sing, not because I didn't want to join in. And verse? Don't think about it. I would stammer and get red-faced as the words tangled on my tongue. I would hear family members remark on how different I was from my sister. The relatives weren't the only ones. Mom and Dad made it obvious who was the family star. I was left on my own as Lily was escorted between painting workshops, singing lessons, and dancing sessions. I didn't mind too much since I took comfort in the ancient, dusty books that adorned our shelf. Great Aunt Maggie was the only one who appeared to understand me. She would discover me with my nose deep in a book, either up in the treehouse or behind the garage. As she settled down next to me, she would inquire, "What adventure are you on today, Cameron?" Thankful for the interruption, I would glance up. "Oh, just reading about ancient Egypt," I would respond, pointing to the cover of my most recent discovery alongside her. Maggie's eyes would sparkle as she nodded. "Girl, you've got everything under control. Never listen to someone who tells you otherwise." I felt like my soul was being soothed by those times spent with Maggie. She didn't expect me to be someone I wasn't or to perform. I could just be Cameron with her, the quiet, bookish girl who liked the solitude of paper and ink better than the commotion of family parties. Even while I treasured such times, they couldn't take away the hurt of being the kid who was forgotten. My parents would show Lily their appreciation and give her presents, such as new clothes or the newest technology, if she learned a new song or won an award. And me. I received hand-me-downs in frustrated sighs. My haven was school. I settled in well in the classroom, even if I wasn't exactly Miss Popularity. I wasn't going to sit there and let the lessons sink in. Instead, I was going to make sure I understood everything the professor said. After class, I would remark, "Mrs. Thompson," in a calm but firm voice, "could you repeat the section on mitosis?" I didn't really understand. She would smile, clearly enjoying my attention. "Cameron, of course." "How about we review it together?" I would ask teachers for book recommendations if they were unable to do so. Before long, my backpack was always overflowing with additional reading materials. I was determined to become an expert in every area, so I would stay up late reading those books. By that time, all of that effort had paid off. I was at the top of my class when I started high school. I was the best at something for the first time in my life. I even made some bookish friends who were understanding of my reserved demeanor. When graduation drew near, our home turned into Lily Central. Mom was always helping her assemble her portfolio for some prestigious college's advertising and public relations program. Mom would exclaim, "Oh, honey, this campaign idea is perfect," as she gazed at Lily's work. "You're so talented." I would roll my eyes, go to my room, and spend all of my time studying. However, something inside of me exploded one evening over another family meal that was focused on Lily's college plans. My words, "I'm going to college too," came out quickly. "I want to study management." The ensuing hush was deafening. Then they all started laughing, which shocked and pained me. Mom responded, "Oh, baby," as she wiped away her tears. "We couldn't afford that. Once you graduate, you'll need to find employment. Simply put, you lack your sister's talent." It seemed as if someone had hit me. But I'm the top student in my class." I stumbled, an embarrassed and angry expression on my face. "I get straight A's." I hurried to my room and returned with my report card, which I slammed onto the table. Their eyes widened in amazement as they all leaned in to observe. "Well, I'll be damned," Dad said in a low voice while rubbing his head. "When did this happen?" "It's been happening for years," I said, "not that any of you ever noticed." At least Mom was decent enough to seem embarrassed. She started to say, "Cameron, we had no idea," when Dad interrupted. "See, it makes no difference. Lily's schooling has used up all of our savings. Cameron, there's nothing left for you." I apologize, but that's the reality. After graduation, you'll work at my cousin Frank's restaurant. I turned and ran, ignoring their calls. I sprinted up the stairs into my room, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. As I collapsed onto my bed, sobs racking my body, I felt something inside me harden. Fine, I thought, my hands clenching into fists. If they won't help me, I'll find another way. I'll show them all what Cameron can do. The next few months were a blur. Lily headed off to college, her departure marked by tearful goodbyes and proud parental embraces. Meanwhile, I threw myself into my studies with renewed vigor, determined to graduate at the top of my class. During this time, I found myself spending more and more time with Great Aunt Maggie. Her small cozy house became my refuge from the tension at home. One afternoon, as we sat in her sunlit kitchen sipping tea, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "So Cameron," she said, her kind eyes fixed on me, "what are your plans after graduation?" I stared into my teacup, fighting back tears. I don't know, Aunt Maggie. Mom and Dad won't help me with college. They say there's no money left after paying for Lily's education. Maggie was quiet for a moment, then reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Cameron, dear, I've got some savings. I'd like to give them to you for college. You're smart as a whip, and I'll be damned if I let that brain of yours go to waste." The reality of her words hit me like a tidal wave. I burst into tears, overwhelmed by her generosity, and the sudden realization that my dreams weren't dead after all. "Thank you," I sobbed, throwing my arms around her. "Thank you so much, Aunt Maggie." The months flew by, and before I knew it, I was walking across the stage at graduation, diploma in hand. As I scanned the crowd, I saw Aunt Maggie beaming at me. My parents were there too, looking proud but uncomfortable. That evening, as I pored over college brochures, Mom walked in. "Cameron, honey," she said, her voice syrupy sweet, "your father's cousin Frank called. He's got a waitressing job for you at his restaurant. Isn't that exciting?" I took a deep breath. "Actually, Mom, I won't be needing that job. I'm going to college." Dad appeared in the doorway, frowning. "And how exactly do you plan to pay for that?" "Aunt Maggie is helping me," I said, my chin held high. "She's giving me her savings for tuition." The shocked silence that followed was almost comical. Then, to my disbelief, Dad's face turned red with anger. "Absolutely not," he bellowed. "If Maggie's got money to spare, it should go to Lily." She needs a car for her job in advertising after she graduates next year. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? I spat. This is my chance to get an education, to make something of myself. Don't be selfish, Cameron, Mom chimed in. Your sister needs that money more than you do. No, I said, my voice shaking but firm. This is my money now, and I'm using it for college. End of discussion. From that moment on, life at home became unbearable. My parents either ignored me completely or snapped at me over the smallest things. The tension was suffocating. After a particularly nasty argument, I called Aunt Maggie in tears and told her everything. "Pack your bags, sweetheart," she said without hesitation. "You're moving in with me." The next day, I stuffed everything I owned into a cab and drove away, watching my childhood home shrink in the rearview mirror. As I pulled up to Aunt Maggie's house, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The summer flew by in a whirlwind of preparation, and before I knew it, I was stepping onto the campus of State University. Thanks to my stellar grades and Aunt Maggie's generosity, I'd gotten into the management program I'd always dreamed of. On my first day of classes, I felt like I was floating on air as I sat in my introduction to business lecture, drinking in every word. I couldn't help but think, I made it. I'm really here. Meanwhile, Lily was starting her senior year at her fancy college. I hadn't heard much from her or my parents since I'd moved out, but I tried not to let it bother me. I was too busy reveling in my newfound freedom and the excitement of college life. But then, about a month into the semester, Aunt Maggie called me. "Cameron, dear," she said, her voice hesitant. "I think you should sit down for this." My heart raced as she filled me in on the family drama I'd missed. Apparently, Lily had shown up at home out of the blue, announcing she'd dropped out of college. The reason? She was pregnant. According to Aunt Maggie, Lily had been flippant about the whole thing. "Oh, don't worry," she'd said, tossing her hair. "The baby's father is loaded. We'll be getting married soon." But the story didn't end there. It turned out Lily's boyfriend wasn't as committed as she thought. When he found out she'd been sleeping with his friend too, all hell broke loose. Now they don't even know who the father is. Aunt Maggie sighed. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process it all. Part of me felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. The golden child had fallen from her pedestal. But mostly, I just felt sad for Lily and the mess she'd gotten herself into. The saga continued over the next few months. Aunt Maggie kept me updated on all the gossip from the family gatherings I no longer attended. When Lily's baby was born, a DNA test confirmed her boyfriend was indeed the father. But instead of the fairy tale wedding Lily had envisioned, he simply agreed to pay child support. The final blow came when Lily, desperate for work, took a job as a waitress at Uncle Frank's restaurant, the very job my parents had tried to foist on me. As I hung up the phone, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. There was a small, petty part of me that wanted to gloat, to rub my success in my family's faces. But mostly, I just felt a profound sense of gratitude for where I was and how far I'd come. Years flew by in a blur of lectures, exams, and late-night study sessions. Before I knew it, I was walking across the stage at graduation, my hard-earned management degree clutched tightly in my hand. As I scanned the crowd, I saw Aunt Maggie beaming at me, tears of pride in her eyes. Thanks to my top grades and glowing recommendations from my professors, I landed a job as a manager at the Gilded Fork, one of the most prestigious restaurants in the city. The salary was more than I'd ever dreamed of, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly successful. With my first paycheck, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I marched into the electronics store and bought the latest smartphone for Aunt Maggie. Her face lit up when I presented it to her. "Oh, Cameron," she gasped, turning the sleek device over in her hands. "This is too much." I grinned, already pulling out my own phone. "Not at all. Now let me show you how to use it." Over the next few weeks, I taught Aunt Maggie the ins and outs of social media. She took to it like a duck to water, especially loving Facebook's video feature. Soon her page was filled with clips of her garden, her cat, and her infamous apple pie in various stages of creation. I'd watch her videos during my lunch breaks, always making sure to leave a comment or a like. It was our way of staying connected, even when work kept me busy. One day, as I was preparing for the dinner rush, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, surprised to see my mother's name on the screen. We hadn't spoken in years. "Cameron," her voice was hesitant. "We were hoping you might come over to talk." After a long pause, I agreed. That Sunday, I found myself standing on the porch of my childhood home, my hand hovering over the doorbell. Before I could press it, the door swung open. "Cameron," my mother pulled me into a tight hug. "Oh, sweetie, it's so good to see you." Inside, I found my father, Lily, and a toddler I assumed was my niece. The atmosphere was tense, but not hostile, like I'd feared. "You look good, kiddo," Dad said, his voice gruff but warm. "We hear you're doing well for yourself." I nodded, still wary. "I am. I'm a manager at the Gilded Fork now." Their eyes widened at the name of the restaurant. Mom cleared her throat. That's wonderful, dear. Actually, that's part of why we wanted to talk to you." Over the next hour, they apologized for how they treated me, admitting they'd been wrong to dismiss my potential. Then came the real reason for the reunion. "Cameron," Mom said, glancing at Lily. We were wondering if you might be able to help Lily get a job at your restaurant." I looked at my sister, bouncing her daughter on her knee. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I'll see what I can do," I said finally. "No promises, but I'll ask." True to my word, I spoke to Mr. Reeves, the restaurant owner, about Lily. To my surprise, he agreed to give her a shot as an administrator. Lily started the following week. I watched her closely, half expecting her to fail or cause drama. But to my shock, she excelled. She was punctual, efficient, and the customers loved her charm. As the weeks passed, I found myself relaxing around her. We weren't best friends by any means, but we developed a cordial working relationship. Just when I thought I had everything figured out, the universe decided to throw me another curveball, this time a positive one. Mr. Reeves called me into his office one day. My heart raced, wondering if I'd done something wrong. Instead, he grinned at me and said, "Cameron, how would you like to help me expand the business?" Before I knew it, I was overseeing the opening of not one, but 3 new restaurants. My days became a whirlwind of staff meetings, menu tastings, and number crunching. It was exhausting, exhilarating, and everything I'd ever dreamed of. The promotion came with a significant pay bump, and suddenly I found myself with more money than I knew what to do with. That's when the calls from my parents started. At first, it was just small things. "The roof is leaking," Mom would say, her voice hesitant. "We were wondering if you might be able to help out a little." I was surprised at how good it felt to say yes, to be able to solve their problems with a simple transfer of funds. It started with the roof, then it was a new water heater, and before long, I was funding a complete home renovation. As their financial situation improved, thanks to my monthly allowance, the infamous family parties started up again. But this time, when I attended, things were different. "Have you heard about Cameron's latest project?" Mom would gush to the relatives. "She's opening a new restaurant downtown. We're so proud of her." I'd catch Lily's eye across the room, and she'd give me a small smile. She was doing well too, having been promoted to head administrator at the Gilded Fork. My girls, Dad would say, an arm around each of us, both of them making their old man proud. Part of me wanted to be bitter, to remind them of how they treated me before. But a larger part reveled in the warmth of their approval, something I'd craved for so long. As I drove home that night, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. Finally, after all these years, I had what I'd always wanted: success in my career and the love and appreciation of my family. I was the golden child now, but better than that, I was my own woman, standing on my own 2 feet. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon when my world came crashing down around me. I was scrolling through Facebook, sipping my coffee, when I saw that Aunt Maggie had posted a new video. It was from one of the family gatherings I'd missed due to work commitments. Smiling, I clicked play, expecting to see the usual scenes of laughter and mirth. What I saw instead made my blood run cold. There, in living color, were my parents, their faces flushed with alcohol and self-righteousness. Mom was gesticulating wildly, her voice slurred but unmistakable. And Cameron, that ungrateful little freeloader, she was saying, "She barely gives us anything. We're not made of money, you know." Dad chimed in, his face red. "That's right, we're doing just fine thanks to our Lily. She's the one keeping that fancy restaurant afloat. Cameron just rides on her coattails." The video continued with various relatives nodding along, some even adding their own criticisms. Lily sat in the corner, looking uncomfortable but not contradicting them. As the video ended, I sat there stunned. How could they, after everything I'd done for them, all the money I'd given them, how could they turn around and say such awful, untrue things? With shaking hands, I scrolled down to the comments. There, I saw a stream of messages from my parents. "Maggie, delete this video right now. You had no right to post this. Take it down immediately." But Aunt Maggie's response made me burst into tears. "I don't know how to delete videos, and even if I did, I wouldn't. It's time everyone saw the truth about how you treat Cameron. She's the one supporting you, and this is how you repay her kindness. Shame on you both." I sat there for what felt like hours, replaying the video, reading and rereading the comments. The betrayal cut deep, reopening wounds I thought had long since healed. Finally, I picked up my phone and dialed Aunt Maggie's number. "Oh, Cameron, dear," she said when she answered, her voice full of sympathy. "I take it you've seen the video." "Yeah," I choked, my voice raw from crying. "I can't believe it, Aunt Maggie. How could they?" I could hear the anger in her voice as she replied, "They've always been like this, Cameron. You just haven't been around to see it. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but maybe it's for the best. You deserve to know the truth." We talked for hours, Aunt Maggie comforting me as I cycled through shock, anger, and grief. As night fell, I made a decision. I'm cutting them off. I told Aunt Maggie, my voice firm despite the pain in my heart. No more money. No more help. They made their bed, now they can lie in it. The days following the video revelation were some of the hardest of my life. My phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls from my parents, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Their words, so cruel and untrue, played on a loop in my mind. Finally, after a week of silence, I sent them a brief, cold text. "I've seen the video. I know what you really think of me. Don't contact me again. The money stops now." Their responses came flooding in immediately. At first, they were apologetic. "Cameron, sweetie, we're so sorry. We didn't mean any of it. Please forgive us." But as the days passed and I maintained my silence, their tune changed. "We're your parents, you owe us." Each message twisted the knife deeper, but I stood firm. I'd given them chance after chance, and they'd thrown it all back in my face. It was time to break the cycle. Lily, surprisingly, stayed out of it. At work, she was the model employee, efficient and professional. If she harbored any resentment over the loss of our parents' financial support, she didn't show it. Our interactions remained cordial but distant. "I'm not taking sides," she told me one day after a staff meeting. "It's between you and them." I nodded, appreciating her neutrality, even if part of me wished she'd stand up for me. But I understood. She had her own child to think of now. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself leaning heavily on Aunt Maggie. Our Sunday video calls became the highlight of my week. She'd regale me with stories from her garden or her latest baking adventure, providing a much-needed dose of normalcy in the chaos my life had become. She would tell me, "You're doing the right thing, Cameron," whenever I started to have second thoughts. "Don't let them manipulate you anymore." Other family members started contacting me as well, which surprised me. I received a passionate note from my cousin Sarah, who had always been nice to me during family get-togethers. I watched the video. "Cameron, I want you to know how wonderful you are. You are an inspiration because of what you have accomplished and how you have benefited everyone. Nobody should be able to convince you differently." Dad's brother, Uncle Bob, contacted me unexpectedly. "I have seen you mature into this amazing woman, kid. If your parents are unable to see your uniqueness, they are idiots. Your family is on your side. Keep it in mind." My wounded heart felt like it was being soothed by these encouraging remarks. I came to see that although I had lost my parents, I had acquired a family that valued me for who I really was. Mr. Reeves invited me into his office as the year came to an end. I entered anxious, wondering if my performance at work had been impacted in any way by the home drama. Rather, he grinned widely and declared, "Next year, Cameron, I'm retiring. I want you to become the restaurant group's new CEO." I was stunned into stillness as I stood there. "Are you sure?" I stammered out at the end. His eyes were sparkling as he nodded. "Never in my life have I been more certain of anything. Cameron, you've earned this. This business has thrived because of you. It's time for you to take charge." I came to a deep realization as I left his office, my mind aflutter with possibilities. The young girl who had been disregarded and undervalued had developed into a lady who had exceeded everyone's expectations, even her own.